Please, I'm so sorry about what happened to your father. Please, go inside, help yourself. And then once they're, like, not even looking at her, like, I bet she came here for the food. So insulting. I would come to parties for food. Hello and welcome. You're listening to the TWGOKcast, a The World God Only Knows reread and rewatch podcast. I'm Aquason.
And I'm Magile.
And this is episode 3. We're covering the Mio Arc. This is for manga chapters. Refresh my memory, Magile. You read it today, right?
Yesterday. It's 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, and it's episodes 2, like the second half of 2, and...
Yep. Episode 3. Yeah.
Okay. So, before we get started, I always ask you a question, and apparently you have a important question for me this time.
Okay, I think calling it an important question is a bit of an exaggeration, but, you know, prior to this episode, I figured I'd want to get your thoughts on tsunderes as a whole. Do you like them?
Oh,
do you have any favorite tsunderes?
Okay, so, interesting starting question, because I kind of had a similar question I wanted to ask you, but I think, like, okay, I'm gonna start off with a kind of bold, I don't know, hot take, I don't know. I think tsundere is essentially just the jerk with a heart of gold, or the, for like a male character, it'd be like, you know, the tough guy who has a soft side. It's like, when you're, in English, we typically associate this with like female anime characters, like, Rin Tosaka from Fate Stay Night, or, you know, what's that Evangelion character, Asuka? You know, you get the character archetype. But I feel like there's something more broadly appealing outside of just using the, like, referring to the stock anime archetype, in the sense that a lot of us are drawn, and I would include myself into this, by people who have that sort of conflict with themselves, not being able to fully admit their own feelings, or presenting one front, but having a side of them that is, like, kinder or softer or whatever. And then, you know, you can talk about tsunderes who are, like, nice most of the time, but then they get really upset and, like, what's the trope term? I'm trying to remember it. Anger born of worry, where, like, they hit someone because, like, how dare you do something like that because, like, you made me so scared. Don't do something so dangerous like that ever again, kind of thing. Like, Hermione Granger does that once in Harry Potter or something. And because of that, I don't want to say, like, oh yeah, I like tsunderes, because it feels so reductive to me. It's just like, I think it's just generally an appealing character dynamic or a character trope, you know?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the general thoughts of tsunderes are generally popular. And I think it's more... I think one of the things we want to get into with this episode as well is generally with tsunderes, there's more to them than just the general, you know, aspects of them that make them tsunderes.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is, Magile, how do you feel about like this kind of romance between characters between two different kind of worlds? You know, you got your classic class divide between rich and poor, or like similar kind of conflict in that kind of thing. Do you think that is like a classic, or is it a worn out kind of storytelling like structure for like romance, or, you know?
You know, in general, I don't think there's any trope that's necessarily worn out. Even ones that are done to death still have some aspects you can use in your stories, you know, and as long as you do try to do something unique with it, I think it's totally fine. So in that regard, I don't have, you know, any issues with it. In general, I think it's mostly just a way to, you know, try to get characters together in some way. You know, it's weird in the having big differences but in some ways you kind of have like the opposites attract type of thing going on, where when people with two different worlds, they have a lot to talk with about the other, since they don't necessarily know what's going on. Typical things like that. So I mean, overall, I think it's a fine thing to do. I don't have any strong opinions on it one way or the other.
Okay. So yeah, that was a surprisingly well done opening question exchange right there. Now we can get to the recap. So, why don't I start? We take place at the beginning of this episode with, I'm pretty sure it's Elsie and Keima. They're in the classroom together. Keima, he is like thinking to himself about how the Conquest girls, they forget their memories. In the anime, they do a really cool little bit of subtle kind of storytelling, subtle characterization when the camera looks at Ayumi, but he doesn't say anything. And Keima sighs or whatever, but And Elsie, she's writing a note for Chihiro, who sits beside her, in front of her?
Beside her, I believe.
To pass to Keima. And then, in the anime, what happens is the teacher, Nakaido, she calls on Chihiro to read the next page, and she instead reads out this note that she was supposed to pass on to Keima, and it's an apology for what happened in the bath. Please forget it. It was embarrassing. And the whole class is mighty interested in what apparently happened. After that, from there, we transition to outside, learning more about the school. As Elsie, she's new here. She doesn't know much. In the anime here, in the manga here, we get a little bit here, which isn't actually included in the anime episode, where Keima asks, why are they... the top comes up that this is a great place for the loose souls because there's so many girls here at the school, young girls. And Elsie, in a kind of how would I describe it? Kind of like an ominous kind of panel, that reveals that the loose souls get reincarnated as the children of the host, which is something that I don't think the anime ever says. I can't remember if Hakwa says it or if she goes straight to that they're demon souls. But this is not really a plot point that gets drawn up again afterwards.
I think that's for the best.
And that it's the logistics of it are a little weird. So I'm gonna interrupt my recap for a moment here just to talk about this. I think a part of me, when I try to rationalize the character arc, the story arc of TWGOK as a whole, all the moving pieces in the world building, I think this is less that they get reincarnated as a child being born, because instead it's more they draw on for whatever reason the emotions or the negative feelings of women, fertile women. Sounds a little gross, but yeah, in order to be able to reincarnate, because of what happens with Yui's arc and things like that, where some of the weirdness of the body part, or the body hosting, it seems specific to the body, in order to nourish it. And in Ryako's arc, it comes out that Elsie is able to communicate and get the loose soul to voluntarily leave the host, because Ryako's gap in the heart is not feeding the loose soul the energy it needs in order to be able to reincarnate or to level up enough to manifest. It's something that I feel is not specifically elucidated in the clearest terms or fully rationalized in a way that is satisfying without a bit of like needing you to kind of headcanon or interpret. But that was a lot to say. It's a thing that does not get brought up in the anime. And then we go back to our recap. Why don't you pick up with our recap?
Okay. Yeah. So,
sorry for the digression, folks. That may get cut entirely.
Hey, whether or not it gets cut, it doesn't matter to me. So Kama and Elsie are walking around the school grounds, and they pass by a shop that is selling it's omelet soba sandwiches, correct?
Yes. Omelet soba pan. Pan means bread. The English sub and dub translated as omelet soba sandwiches because it's like, you know, it's bread with like some meat in the middle, and like it's basically a sandwich in a sense, kind of a hot dog. You get it. It's you get the idea when you say sandwich.
Thank you for the translation. So there's a large mass of students around the school who are like, they're trying to get their omelet soba sandwiches since they're really popular. And then, you know, as Kama and Elsie are walking, the alarm goes off for another loose soul being detected in the area. And they initially suspect that it was someone in the mass of students, but it turns out to not be, because just after that, our main girl for this arc, a Miss Mio Aoyama, walks up with her chauffeur, whose name I'm blanking on now. Murata? Is that
Morita.
it? Morita. I was close.
Morita.
I was very close. He's a very pivotal character to the plot.
He shows up later in the like 200 chapters later. He is important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I imagine I have a rough idea of when he shows up again. Anyways, yeah, Mio's interested in acquiring one of these omelet soba sandwiches, and she is known around in the school as the rich girl, since she's the daughter of the CEO of the prestigious Aoyama Corporation. So you know, she gets
Aoyama Central Industries.
Oh, thank you for the correct terminology. Anyways, Mio's able to make her way to the front of the shop, where she goes ahead and asks for one of them. But when she goes to pay, she only has large bills on her. Was it 10,000 or 100,000 yen that she had on her?
10,000 yen.
10,000 yen.
Basically $100 bill.
Yeah, and they were like $1, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Food is cheap in Japan.
Yeah, I wish it was cheap everywhere else. Anyways, the seller does not have the ability to break a $100 bill. They only accept 20s and lower. So Mio is just like, give me as much as you can give me, which is pretty much their entire stock as she sells them out, and she takes them all with her.
That was a bad call by the food vendor, I must say. Like that, I would be more upset at the food vendor for making that decision than the rich person for buying all of it. You know, you let this person at the back of the line just walk up and buy all your stuff, and all these other people were here first.
Yeah,
super rude.
It's definitely questionable. Okay, did you want to take over the next part?
Not really. I just wanted to make a joke, but okay, I will. So anyway, you know, as she's leaving, Mia turns back to them and he's like, quit your squawking. If you want, whatever, just get rich like me. Just do it. You know, just be rich, be better. And you know, she acts like, you know, she deserves it because she's rich. And Kama and Elsie sigh and like, oh my god, this is gonna be a pain to do. So we then cut to them hanging out on the balcony of a rooftop, or no, on the balcony of one of the school classrooms. Elsie is reading a little readout that summarizes information about Mio, explaining to the audience who she is. She's like, oh, this is going to be a real issue. And then Kama explains, actually, it's probably not. Like, I've seen, like, this is a super common character archetype in games. Like, I've seen 1,000 of them. And he's like, well, how do you know it's gonna work? He's like, it's always gonna work. It's always the same. You know, they're short, they got twin tails, they have a high forehead, they're rich, they are short. I might have already mentioned that. I don't really care. The point is, it's a combination of character traits that leads to a certain kind of character in anime, manga, visual novel, game kind of media. And Kame was like, it would be 100%. My prediction would be 100% if she was also short. And then Elsie's like, that there's no way that could be. And then she sees and notices that Mio, she's wearing these platform boots to extend her height. And she's like, you were right, Kami-sama. Oh my god. And she looks around and Kame is gone. And she goes in and she notices that he's in the classroom. And she's like, oh, thank heavens I found you again. Or I thought you ran off or whatever. And then Kama is like, I love you. And then there's I'm not going to fucking retell the joke beat by beat, because hopefully everyone's seen it. But it's a great joke where repeatedly Kama is practicing lines for his upcoming confession, and Elsie is super flustered and embarrassed and be like, oh, we're supposed to be buddies, no. And then even though I know it's this is just pretend, this is just an act, it's still embarrassing. And he's like, it's not an act. And no, that line was an act. Stop. Anyway, after that, we then cut to Kama's... Actually, do we cut to Kama's? I'm pretty sure what happens is we get a little bit of dialogue about how Kama plans to keep using his anime video game knowledge as the basis for his conquest, because it's very samurai, you know? You gotta use the weapons that you are familiar with.
Yep.
Anyway, we cut to the confession that Kama tries to use on Mio, where he stands in front of her, the wind's blowing, and he asks... actually, no, he doesn't ask. He just says, I love you. Please go out with me. And it does not go well. Mio, signals for Marita to kick his ass, and then they leave.
Okay, wait, I need to interrupt you here real quick. This is
right.
what I've been waiting for. The most important thing I need to mention at this current moment, since it got brought up. Are you familiar with the wrestling move that Marita does to Kama?
Let me see. Listen, I'm really good at trivia, so I feel the need to answer this right, even though it's meaningless. There's no points. No one will care if I get it wrong. I feel like it's a figure 8 lock.
Okay, it is not a figure 8 lock. It is a submission type of hold. It is called the Mexican surfboard.
I guess I did not expect that. Is there any further relevance? Is this a particularly rare or common move?
No, I have no idea. I just was curious what the name of it was, and I looked it up, and I needed to mention it because it had a hilarious name.
Okay. Yeah, so the confession goes poorly. Elsie is like, oh no. And then Kama, meanwhile, even though he got rejected, he's like, I expected to be rejected, but in a different way than this. It's very suspicious. And he's like, Elsie, let's follow her. And then she's like, yeah, right away. And they use the raiment to magic up a long band of string that they just follow the car. They just walk however many kilometers to wherever the chauffeur went. And as they pass by a mansion, except it turns out, no, it doesn't lead to a mansion. It's, big plot twist of the arc, an apartment that's by the mansion. And we get before the big act break or chapter ending, when Mio arrives home and she says, I'm home. And that's that part.
Woo.
I was about to call you Elsie, which is stupid. Magile, What happens at the start of the next episode, next chapter?
So yeah, in the in Mio's house, Marita criticizes Mio for spending all of her monthly allowance on omelet soba sandwiches. Since as she's poor now, and she's gonna have to be eating omelet soba sandwiches for ages, and they're gonna go poor. And it was generally a terrible use of money all around.
Also, he mentioned specifically that her mother is now working hard to make ends meet, and like she basically just wasted some really important money that was supposed to last a month.
Mm-hmm. And Kim and Elsie are outside, looking into the conversation. Eventually, Moira gets frustrated at what was going on with Mio, and decides that it's not worth trying to chauffeur for her anymore. He was only really doing it because he was her dad's chauffeur, but decided it's not worth it anymore, and storms out of the house and drives off.
Yeah. I love that in the anime they added like a detail where he slaps on like a taxi sign onto the top of his car before he leaves. It's a funny little added gag. Continue, Magile.
Yep. So Mia walks outside, trying to follow him, and then looks over and sees Keima and Elsie, or just Keima at this point.
Keima and a trash can.
Yeah, excuse me, a trash can. And is thinking that Keima was stalking her, the person who just confessed love. And she's generally pretty, creeped out by the general idea of it. So afterwards, Keima and Elsie, they start heading out, thinking about what they need to do, and they start discussing how Elsie thinks about how, oh boy, another bad, interaction at the start of a conquest. But Keima's like, no, this is a good thing, because this is now a secret that we share between us. And, as noted previously, any type of bad interaction can be turned into, a good relationship. It's all about just getting those meetings in general.
Yeah. It's a classic storyline thing for, two people to be bonded by a shared secret.
Yep. So then it cuts just straight to the next day, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mio's it's time for Mio to head out to school, and of course Marita's not there to bring her to school anymore, so she was like, oh, I'm gonna have to walk. But that's when Keima institutes his plan. He's gonna become her chauffeur. Mio's originally, hesitant immediately, as she's like, riding around by a commoner would make her look not good. So she begins to try walking away.
On a bicycle.
Yeah, on a bicycle. So Mio tries walking away, but she immediately twists her ankle since she's still wearing her platform boots. So after Mio gets upset about the bicycle once again, Elsie uses her magic to transform into a bike with a rickshaw attached. She'll make it more, fancy for Mio. So, with that change, Mio's a lot more fine with going to school that way. So, the first day goes by, and the students at the school comment on Mio's new chauffeur being Keima, and how what the witch want is very weird at times. So this goes on for a bit.
We get a montage, yeah.
A montage of Keima doing this for a couple days, and the things that Elsie has attaches to the back of the bike just get more and more dramatic as the days go on, till eventually one day there's a giant train attached to the bike, and Keima's like, I can't do this. This is too heavy, and Mio's like, you chose this. Why did you do that? And that's when she's like, oh, well, maybe I can motivate you. So she gets her her crop, the name of the whip she uses. More information I looked up because I was curious on the name of it.
You didn't know that riding crops were called riding crops?
Listen, I'm not a rich person. I don't know the names of them, okay? I knew it was a fancy whip. Anyway, she starts, hitting Kama.
Swinging.
Messing around with him.
No, she doesn't hit him. She doesn't land a single hit.
Okay, tries to. It's the same thing. Okay. Eventually, Kama ends up running away, and he's, like, holding on to, like, a pole to try to get away from her. But it's the first time Mio's really ever smiling. And she seems genuinely happy before she's like, I don't want to mess around with commoners. And kind of just goes off. Did you want to take over from here?
Yes.
Okay.
And, Kama takes note of that. And I think at this point, what happens is that... Actually, no, I'm pretty sure... Okay, we cut to them at Mio's house, I'm pretty sure. Her apartment outside of it. And, like, he's evaluating, like, putting the pieces together. And Elsie, meanwhile, talks about what a horrible girl this Mio girl is, because she pretends to be rich even though she isn't, and she doesn't burn incense for her father. Which did you know what that meant when you first watched or read this?
Not really, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay. Did you get the sense of what it was supposed to mean?
I mean,
from the reference that even the dead or whatever, like, and then Kame was like, devil even says that you should do that. That's whatever.
I mean, I know it's about, like, honoring the people who've passed away. I don't know too much about the specifics of Japanese culture, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's basically it.
Okay.
Especially for someone who has passed within, like, recently.
Mm-hmm.
And, every other significant occasion. Anyway, sorry, not to get sidetracked, but I feel like that's the thing that I'm very good at because I got a lot of trivia. And I don't want to just be blocks. I want to mix up the format a little bit. Anyway, Kama, he puts all the pieces together just as they also discover a invitation to a fancy party that Mio has. And then we go to the big... first, before we go to the big climax scene, and then Kama says his famous line, I can see the ending. And then we cut to, depending on... so in the anime, they put a little bit of a buffer on this first. They cut to after school afternoon, Kama comes to pick up Mio, in, like, a pumpkin carriage, and, like, he announces that they're going to a party or something. In the manga, we just cut to the evening, because it's the next chapter, and, Kama has brought Mio out to a fancy party. Or, not really. He's actually just brought her to the garden behind a fancy party. He's gonna put on a nice little party date kind of thing with her. He's dressed up. He's taken off his glasses again because this is still early on, and he probably feels like he needs to put up the Bishonen up a bit by taking off those glasses. But afterwards, he's not gonna do that again. And Kama arrives. Mio, like, is surprised at how well he dresses up, and they basically go kind of through the interactions of establishing this kind of fancy ball party date, even though that they're not actually going inside. Kama, he wants to learn how to dance. Mio obliges him after, like, a bit of an interruption with Elsie coming out dressed like a fancy maid. And so they're dancing, they're talking a bit about their like her life in the context of like Keima feeling like this is kind of unbelievable, like from straight out of a storybook or a manga. And then some douchebags show up, some rich assholes appear, and they are acting real snotty. They're like, oh Mio, oh Miss Ayama, I'm surprised you arrived. I didn't think you were gonna come. Please, I'm so sorry about what happened to your father. Please, go inside, help yourself. And then they like snidely, like once they're like not even looking at her, like, I bet she came here for the food. So insulting. I would come to parties for food. If that says something about me, I don't care. Anyway, lost my train of thought with that remark.
We're talking about rich people being assholes.
Go.
Well, you're passing to me? Oh my gosh, this is scary. I wasn't expecting that. Did you at least transfer some, like, stats? Did you use, like, Swords Dance?
No, I had an Intimidate debuff. It was a bad choice on my part.
Okay, well, you should have just hard switched. Anyways, moving off of that topic, I believe this is about the time, you know, Mio starts talking about how since interacting with Keima, all of the memories of her father have been starting, you know, get smaller in her mind as she's now focused on this new thing. And she's really, you know, scared of forgetting her father, which has kind of been the main thing driving her maintaining this rich personality and trying to pass off as a rich person. It's really just, it's the pride of the Aoyama family is the main thing. So, you know, eventually, you know, Keima puts the thought out of, hey, you know, you've done enough for your father. Do you want to be like those douchebags, as you so eloquently put it, or do you want to start being your own person and start making your own choices?
He kind of calls her eventually, out, you know?
Yeah. And you know, she thinks on stuff, and that's what eventually leads up, you know, to the big kiss of the episode.
First, she punches him, though.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Like a really big punch.
Mm-hmm. She gotta show the soon, you know?
Yeah. And, what was I gonna say? Like, it's like this final speech is kind of like built up in that, like, kind of like the first arc as well, in a sense, that with Ayumi, how like she like interrupts him and throws the apples at his face. It's a similar kind of pattern there. Anyway, I've stolen the baton, so I'm gonna run with this.
Is that a reference to the first episode of TWGOK with running and batons and Ayumi? It's a perfect transition. Continue.
Perfect transition. I'm running. So yeah, this big kiss happens because she finally is forced to confront, do you want to live in that world, or do you want to like be happy and smile or whatever in mine? You gotta choose. And like as she's torn between these things, she realizes that she wants to be with Keima, and then they kiss. And then we cut to after the conquest. It's another day at Majima High. They're outside the sandwich stall, and Mio walks up, and she's like, "Excuse me, person I don't know, is this enough change to buy an omelet soba sandwich?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, thanks." And then she goes up and walks to go buy a sandwich. And there's like, Elsie talks about like, oh, it's a shame that she lost her memory. In the manga, it's sarcastic because early on in this point, there's still that like light shipping kind of element between in the anime. They know how the rest of the TWGOK eventually develops. They don't make it jealous at all or sarcastic. She's like, oh, it's a shame that Mio forgot her memories. And Keima is like, no, it's good that she's moved on from me and her father. That way she can live her own life. And then end scene.
Woo! And that's episode 2.5 to 3 / chapters 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. So that was. I hope this comes out well, being a little more dynamic in our baton passing and not just straight recapping, throwing in some trivia within the recap itself. This might be terrible for you listeners, in which case I apologize. Now we're going to talk about all the trivia and observations and whatever, stuff that we took notes on or whatever, did not take notes on. So, Magile, do you want to start or should I start?
I can start. I have the only manga-specific note I have to mention.
Okay.
Which is at the very start, how at the very beginning, Keima is playing a game. And he's playing School Days, the visual novel.
Yes.
And the manga makes reference to that.
Okay.
I don't know how familiar you are with School Days.
I know what it is.
Okay,
right?
Good.
We'll leave this to everyone else's to look up. We don't need to talk about it. Anyway, we're gonna start off. I don't know. Do I want to start this chronologically or do I want to start randomly with like something really weird? Okay, let's just do this chronologically in the order that I wrote these notes. So, this is chapter 3 of the manga, right?
Yep.
And this is something that doesn't really happen like after a certain point. But early on, Wakaki, he's recapping every single chapter with like, my name is Keima Katsuragi. I'm a god of games. And I got here's the premise of the story. All right, a demon. I now have to conquer girls, but it's like something that like gets phased out fairly quickly. I feel like it also feels like to me that it's kind of like showing Wakaki's kind of like nervousness with because his first series got canceled like 50 chapters before you could really get to the big interesting twist. So he's constantly like worried and like he wants new readers who first read this chapter be like, okay, I get enough to be able to follow along.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that in the manga, and I kind of took note of that it was a random thing to note. I just imagine it's like a serialization thing to try, get people's attention early on. That's kind of always what I figured it is.
Yeah, like so I don't read a lot of manga despite being a person who translated quite a few different manga. Like it's a thing in manga that in the like sidebars there's usually like the editorial or the magazine has like a little recap of like, oh, here's the basic premise of the story or whatever. I don't know, because this is, 2008? I'm not quite sure exactly how the conventions are at that point. But who knows? Maybe this wasn't quite a thing, or early on it was important. Anyway, so first scene that I really loved about the anime specifically. I'm going to say overall, broadly, I like the anime version way more than the manga version.
I would agree with liking the anime more than the manga.
Okay, so early on in the opening of this episode, they start with Nikaido's class, and she's teaching a story from the Uji Shui Monogatari, and the anime writer basically uses that as a sort of like parallel, sort of like ironic kind of comparison between the story she's telling about this classic lit story that they're studying in their Japanese class, about, a famous artist who was so obsessed with things he could suck the soul out of his model. He had a daughter who was completely unlike him and very sweet, blah 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 blah. Dark rumors. I looked up into this, and first off, this is a legit real life story that you definitely could study within your high school Japanese literature class. It's not from the Uji Shui Monogatari, however. It's called, guess what the title is called?
Oh, what the actual title of it is?
Yeah, the short story.
Oh.
Just throw a guess, and then I will
Artist
immediately
Sucker.
answer. No, it's called Hell Screen. It's about hell.
I guess Artist Sucker. Okay. Oh, okay.
And it's
I get it.
It's a 1918 short story, which is an adaptation of like an old folk story. Blah blah blah. It's not super important, all the details, but I thought it was really cool that they picked a real story to be relevant within this like opening little scene to establish everything. And it's also written on the chalkboard. Anyway, give me a woo or a small woo. How exciting was that, Magile?
That's definitely a woo.
Okay. Next up, I will say that I think the anime does a good job of improving this scene also by having Nikaido call for Chihiro to read the next part out of the page, or to read the next page out, because in the manga she doesn't, and Chihiro just acts kind of like a jerk.
I mean, I think one of the things in the manga, I don't really think they had much characterization planned for her.
Yeah.
Because her design is also a bit slightly off in the manga since it's early on.
I think it's what was it again? I think it's interesting that she's introduced so early on, though. Like, it's not...
she's not named yet, right?
Yeah, she's not named yet. She's not an important character, but she starts off as a background character, which is interesting. And I'm glad that the anime includes her so much and keeps the same voice actress and blah, blah, blah. It makes it feel like a more connected world.
Not in the dub, they don't.
Anyway, blah, 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 blah. What do you think? Okay, this is super short. So, yay or nay? Do you think the omelet soba sandwich looks good? I thought it looked yummy.
I don't know if you know this about me. I am a 100% solid sandwich hater. I hate all sandwiches.
Oh my God.
Of all kinds. I despise them. I think they're an inferior way to eat food. Therefore, I cannot support the omelet soba sandwich.
Cut. We're gonna have to cut that. Cut. All right. If you're listening to this part, I can't share that with the audience. They'll hate this podcast for the rest of eternity. Next up, interesting trivia. So during the part where Keima is explaining the tsundere, right? The armor on the outside, the soft inside. There's a translation error in the manga, which is carried out further in another place, which I will get to. Do you remember? Do you have any idea what I'm referring to?
Not really, if I'm being honest.
Okay. So, in the manga, they say Iron Virgin. This is the Japanese term for an Iron Maiden. That's the whole purpose of this visual metaphor and explaining. It's Iron Maiden. Outside hard, the inside soft. Blah, blah, blah. But this little translation mistake gets carried on into the original soundtrack, where the music for this part is also called Iron Virgin in translations, when it should be Iron Maiden, because that's what we call it in English.
Okay, that's certainly a thing to bring up.
Magile, can you guess what the flag naming scheme for Mio's Arc is?
Isn't it song names? I feel like that's a thing.
A little more specific in this.
Okay. No.
I'll give you a chance for 100 points.
I'll take 0.
Okay. It's Beatles songs. It's, first one, Baby, You're a Rich Girl, playing off Baby, You're a Rich Man. Second, Drive My Car. And third, I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. All Beatles songs.
Thank you for this amazing trivia. I'm not a... we're gonna have to cut this too. I've never listened to any Beatles song ever.
Listen, for the next however many episodes, I'm going to bring up I'm going to quiz you on every single theme, like test you on every flag theming scheme, and see if you can figure out what it is.
Listen, the fact that I got it was a song is impressive to me, because they're just things I've heard in passing. So like I might be 0-1 to you. I'm 1-0 to me.
Okay. Anime. They use the Hellion cipher language on Mio's readout, which is cool, and it's all translatable, and I've done it before. I assume I've mentioned it up to you before, but I assume you honestly pay no attention to the ciphers in the show.
I mean, I know they exist. I didn't go out and translate them.
Right.
Someone already took care of that, fortunately.
Yes. Other things I liked about the anime. So, in the anime, okay, the first one is going to be a very small thing. I like that they added a Marie Antoinette reference with Mio saying, if there's no bread, then I'll just eat sweets. I thought that's just like, oh, it's funny. I get the reference. You know? Did you get the reference?
No. But
No, you didn't get. That's like a famous line of it's a famous allusion to literature and quote. All right.
Well, okay. Listen, I have to toss out that Marie Antoinette, one of my favorite servants in Fate, Fate Grand Order.
Oh my god.
They were my first unit I pulled.
No, not Fate. Don't do this to me, Miguel.
Okay. That's all I know about her.
I'm a lapsed Fate. Enjoyer. I can't. You don't do this to me. Don't bring me back.
I'm a lapsed Fate enjoyer at this point too. We're kind of in the same boat.
Anyway. Okay, this is a dumb thing. This is a super dumb thing. This episode has added the phrase 100% yes to my vocabulary as a thing whenever I say that just without thinking, as a reference that no one else gets as a reference whenever people ask me questions which can be answered with 100% yes. Just because they say that in English. They say 100% yes.
So it's basically just anytime anyone asks a question in which you can respond with yes, you just tack that on there?
I say 100% yes.
Okay.
Yes, I don't understand. It's very stupid, but that's a little trivia fact about me. I don't know. Did you think anything of how the Heidi of the Alps parody was expanded to a full little imagination sequence in the anime?
I noted that down because I thought it was odd. I just referred to it as a Family Guy cutaway gag. Because that's what it felt like at the time. It's definitely a change to make it a full-on cutaway metaphor, I guess is the word to use. I don't know.
It's like an extended Imagine spot, you know? I think, I don't know. I've seen Heidi of the Alps. I don't know when. It might have been... It doesn't matter. So I got the reference, and I was like, I assume you haven't.
That's a great thing to assume. I had no idea it was a reference to something. That probably explains why it feels really weird.
Okay. This is a kind of negative note. It's a positive in the sense the anime skipped over it. There's a really egregious panty shot in the manga.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
The anime skipped.
I had that in my notes, and I decided I didn't want to talk about it. But if you're bringing it up, I'll comment.
I'm just gonna say. Okay.
My comment is that it exists. Sorry, you can continue.
Yeah. It's this is the sign early on to by chapter 3 they haven't even received feedback on the series from readers. The first 3 chapters are written and drawn out before the first chapter gets printed or gets published out to the people. So I feel like this is just early growing pains of not knowing exactly the series' tone fully, you know?
Yeah, you know what?
I feel like afterwards...
You can continue.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I mean,
you go ahead.
okay. I'm going. I think one of the weird things is it's keep on the topic of fan service in the anime at the beginning of episode 2.5. They have screen wipes that are like, I wouldn't say egregiously fan servicey, but they definitely stood out as weirdly fan servicey. Cause like I don't know if you pay attention to the screen wipes in the anime at all.
I pay attention to everything. You're talking about like Elsie in the bath and like.
Yes, because like the first one's in the bath, and I can excuse that one because it happens like right after the like what happened in the bath moment. But then we get one of her as like a boxer, and I'm like, okay, that's very strange. And then there's one of her as a Cupid, and I don't really get it, and it felt weirdly fan servicey.
I don't think Boxer and Cupid were necessarily fan servicey to me. But it is interesting how, I don't know, the episode directors at this time, they're just doing a lot of interesting stuff. Okay. My god, this is a god tier trivia. Okay. So, in the anime, Keima, during the scene right before the start of the climax, right before Keima says, I can see the ending, there is a in-universe detail here, which is I've multiple times made like infographics and posts about this. Do you know what it is? Can you share with the audience?
Listen, you've probably made these infographics like years ago. I've seen them. I couldn't tell you what you're about to tell them. Go ahead, Aqua.
Okay. It's the game that Cam is playing. The character that is like the Tsundere in the game he's playing.
Okay.
It's voiced by Canon's VA, and in a later episode, we see during a montage, she's recording voice lines for that game.
Okay, yep. This does seem familiar.
And it is a incredible thing. Anyway, I'm gonna end on like more serious stuff, so I'm just gonna run through all the trivial stuff right now.
Shoot.
I think it's cool that in the anime they draw Elsie. There's a scene where she's drawing in the sand a pumpkin carriage, because it's a recurring gag that she's always like, whenever like she's repeatedly just drawing like fire trucks in like on the beach in the sand or with crayon on the floor. And they added this little gag here where she draws a pumpkin carriage, and like because we haven't established that she's obsessed with fire trucks yet, she hasn't gone to the library yet, and also because this whole little arc, they're doing a Cinderella reference, you know, with the pumpkin carriage, the whisking the lady away to the ball. It's Cinderella story.
Would you say overall Elsie's just quite a big fan of vehicles of all types?
Like, I'm actually taking this seriously for a second, which I shouldn't, because like she was like, her recollection of history is like, the black ships, blah 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 blah. I love how the anime does the little flashing arrow to show where the party actually is.
Oh, in
That's
the backyard.
Another trivial thing. That,
yep.
Yes. I really like the lighting in the garden scene. Okay. That is all the trivial stuff. Now, I don't know. This is gonna be long, or I'm gonna cut a bunch of stuff. Let's talk about some stuff that's less trivial or straight observational. So we read the manga prototype together.
Yep.
Or not together, but individually we both read it.
We should have read it together.
And this chapter, this arc is reminiscent in a lot of ways, but it's also, you know, fairly different. For our readers who haven't read it, well, what is the big difference? What would you say?
Mio's rich in the prototype manga, whereas, you know, here she's obviously not. She's also not like small. She's a big girl.
And also her dad isn't dead.
Oh, true.
Like, it's the whole thing that's harming her, weighing down on her is a different thing. Which segues into the thing I wanted to talk about this. So I'm gonna lay out that I really enjoyed this arc when I first read it, and later on in my rereads and rewatches. I find, especially the anime, now that I've recently rewatched it, the anime does a good job of like putting emphasis on Mio and her unresolved grief with her dad. Because whenever she brings it up, she always, there's like the anime gives her moments where she like cuts herself off, or then she like she mentions her dad, like, oh, so you've been here before. Of course, I came here with Papa. And then she doesn't say, and many times before, because she's just like, she gets reminded of her dad, and she stops talking and tries to forget about it. Or like, I've danced with Papa so many times, and then she immediately stops dancing and looks pensive. And I thought that was a really, really good way of like building up the actual issue as it is not that she is irresponsible with her money, or that she is, I don't know, so stuck up that she refuses to acknowledge her change in circumstances. This refusal to acknowledge reality is from grief over her dad and trying to make him happy, or what she thinks would continue to make him happy. And that really, like, that kind of thing of like parental family conflict between what a person wants and the desires of the parent, or what you think a parent would want, that kind of stuff in the Tsundere arc also, it's very resonant to me. Like, I find myself like very drawn into it. But what do you think, Magile?
So I think the Mio arc, as far as TWGOK goes, it's not my favorite arc as far overall. I think it does some things well, and I think if you like what the arc is going for, there's a lot to appreciate. Like Aqua is saying, I think one of my big issues with it is I feel like a lot of it, I feel like it kind of misses the mark for me. Because you talk about the grief that Mio's having. I do think that is an important part of her character, but I do think one of the big things to me is I feel like she kind of just does like the things that she's learning from her father, like that the ideas that she has, specifically about holding her head high as a member of the family, which is like the main thing, and working hard. I don't think there's anything necessarily even wrong with that, even in the father's passing. One of the core themes that, Keima talks about at the end is, hey, you can forget about your father, and you need to start doing your own thing. And I don't necessarily even think those ideas are mutually exclusive, which is what really, disconnects me from the plot. 'Cause I think, the father's not saying, Mio, you need to be rich. You need to be the CEO of the corporation. He's just saying you need to be, proud of what you're doing. You need to work hard. And, if that does come in the form of, becoming rich, becoming successful, leading a corporation, that's fine. But I think you can apply those notions to anything that Mio wants to do. I think it's weird that the plot goes the way of saying, you need to forget what your father wants, but you still need to, honor him with things like the incense for him. It's a weird mishmash in tone for me there.
Yeah, so I was going to say that I think, because Came at the end, he says that it's nice, it's good that she's forgotten about me, because like her dad, whatever, she can move on. Which is a very different kind of premise from the prototype, where like they don't forget, and then presumably he would just build up an infinite harem. I think the way I interpret it, it's less that Mio needs to forget her dad, more that to acknowledge that he's passed and that things have changed in a way that she hasn't been able to process or grieve or to okay. Do you know the play A Streetcar Named Desire?
No.
Okay. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning play from the 1940s about this. Okay. I'm going to try to keep this really short. It's about a woman who was at one point fairly like a wealthy socialite, right? But her husband died, and she's now in like her 60s or something, and she is poor, but she lives in delusions of still being rich and proud. And there's this great tragedy within the play of her inability to live within reality, and that she still does things which actively harms her, in the sense that by trying to maintain this image of herself in her mind of being rich and still being a wealthy socialite, that she can't whatever, you get my point, right? You get what I'm reaching for.
Yeah.
I don't know if Wakaki was specifically drawing on this story. I mean, he has drawn on American famous plays. He drew on Death of a Salesman for one of the arcs as one of the inspirations. So, but it's that specifically isn't relevant. The point is, I think Mio's like issue in the sense of her grief and her refusal to move on, her refusal to acknowledge reality, these are it's compelling to me in a way that it's kind of tragic, in a similar way as Blanche Dubois. Whew, I finally found a way to connect those thoughts together, other than just bringing up the trivia. This is like a 1947 play.
Clap, clap, clap.
Yes, that's a thing I also say a lot. But we haven't gotten to that yet, so...
Wait, is that a TWGOK reference?
Yes, you didn't know?
I don't know. I just say that.
You just said that?
I just say it. I mean...
Yes, Elsie says that in the Cake arc.
Okay. Well,
she literally says, "Yay, I did it! Clap, clap, clap," as she's like using the hand. You've caught it, so did I. That's crazy that you didn't realize.
Okay, well, that reference,
anyway.
that accidental reference aside, did you have anything more you wanted to continue with?
Let me see. So, okay, I'm gonna say that. Okay, how do I want to broach this? Okay, so a lot of people have strong opinions about the classic trope of like the tsundere hitting their love interest, right? Some people are really down on it. Some people are kind of like, oh, it's fine or whatever. I'm more on the side of like, this is a cartoon universe in a sense, and we're not playing this for drama. It's like within the rules of the world that we established. It's fine, you can get into really other nuances of it and other angles of critique, but that's what I'm just gonna say for here. I think Mio and Keima's relationship, I kind of did buy into it because of things like when she brings out the whip, you better not make fun of me for forgetting the term. Like, I'm gonna
get
it.
The name of the whip? The name of the whip that I mentioned earlier on that you criticized me for naming because everyone should know it. That's the term that you can't think of currently.
The riding crop. All right. is that like she doesn't actually hit him, and she's more like, it feels to me the way that it's presented, like with her like comedically over exaggerated the flames in the background, that she's more like playing along with this kind of like invented scenario. Like I don't think she was at all serious about being like, you better get me to my destination, and that's why I'm going to hit you, you know? That's kind of how I interpret it. I thought it was like, it was kind of her playing along with, like, doing a bit.
You know, I'm gonna toss this out there. It really does feel like Mio is, like, not really that much of a tsundere, like, at all.
That's a bold choice.
Do you disagree with that statement? I imagine you do.
So, I don't know where to start with this, other than being like, TWGOK has a lot of tsunderes, you would say, right?
Yeah. Everyone's a tsundere.
Like, and at the start of the show, I talked about how I'm kind of like skeptical of the term tsundere, just because I think the very specific performative like kind of aspects of it are kind of superficial in comparison to what actually generally is appealing about this kind of character dynamic, you know, of like of a character not being able to express their own feelings, or having feelings, or having a part of them that they're embarrassed by, but they try to put up like a tough exterior. So I think you saying that Mio isn't much of a tsundere is an interesting thing. I kind of want you to explain more, just to really digest this.
You know, ultimately, I just feel like there's not that much, you know, soon to her. Because, like, the things that the show talks about aren't necessarily her being, you know, like, overly aggressive, or, like, you know, even, like, you know, like, her being mean to Keima. I feel like, for like, almost the entire show, you have, like, her declining the rejection, but that's, you know, like, and sending Royd after him. But I don't think that's, like, that absurd. But, like, you know, after that, once, you know, she sees Keima stalking her, he goes and, you know, helps her, and she's pretty, you know, accepting for the most part. You know, once she, you know, gets into it and actually starts doing it, I think she's like, this is totally fine. Because, I mean, her character really does mostly revolve around, you know, her insecurities with being, you know, poor. I don't really think she puts forth much of the aggressiveness of a tsundere.
Yeah, okay. I feel like listeners are going to debate that. Anyway, that is like all my notes, basically. And I'm glad that I ended on a kind of thematic one instead of ending on more trivia. Is there anything you want to say before we move on to our rating / my non-rating?
You know, overall, I think Mio is pretty cute.
Thanks, Magile. So now, let's go to the rating, non-rating. I guess I will... Do I start or do you start? Does it matter even?
I think you should start. I think you should not rate it first.
Okay. I've always had a soft spot for this arc. I mean, I say that, but I love all of the conquest arcs in TWGOK. I really struggle to ever name a favorite. And, you know, this arc is early on. It's only 3 chapters. It's short. It's not particularly as filled with plot twists and turns. And, but I like the jokes. I like the sort of premise and the character, arc, the character struggle within it. And even though Mio is ultimately not the most important character in TWGOK, she doesn't become a hugely meaningful character within later arcs, I still have a lot of fondness for this arc. I will say it is a arc that I really enjoy. And I like the beetle references in the flag title names.
Is that your final not rating?
Yes.
Okay. So I've commented with Aqua that the Mio Arc is probably my least favorite arc of TWGOK. And I think one of the things about that is even like a bad arc of TWGOK is still pretty good comparative to most things. I said, at the very beginning, I don't know how low my ratings are going to be going on the letter scale. I've been sitting here. Do I want to give this a B? Do I want to give this a C? And I think I've decided to just wimp out and give it a B-. That's a tier now. I can do what I want.
All right. That aggressively B-. What's the word? It is a very bold move, but also a bold, cowardly move to ignore everyone else calling you out on not taking a stronger position. And good on you, Magile.
The B and the C, of course, stand for bold and cowardly in the ranking.
Okay. Well, that was great, Magile. I don't know how this is gonna edit down, but hopefully I get it down to an hour like before. Thank you for listening. Don't follow me on YouTube.
Also, don't follow me on Twitter. I have a Twitter. Don't follow me on it. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. You have to find me.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.